Hello viewers, welcome back to Daily Retro. Today we're going to be talking about one of my favourite consoles of all time, the Sony PlayStation 3. So this console came out in 2007, I think it's 2008 for Europe, but yeah, it's one of my favourite consoles of all time. Basically came out 2007, I would have been 14 years old, almost 15. So yeah, my first experience of the PlayStation 3 console was at a friend's house. There's the really fat model. Really impressed by the jump from PlayStation 2 to PlayStation 3. For me, it was, obviously I was a teenager and I was learning about computing at the time, so it was even more sort of fascinating to see that graphics increase. But yeah, I absolutely loved the PlayStation 3, and I'm going to take you through my games collection today and just talk about some of the memories of some of the games I've got. I'm still absolutely playing the hell out of the PS3 even of late. It's just got so many good titles on so many good genres. Arguably, I would say it's one of the Sony's best libraries. But without further ado, we'll get into some of the games collection, and then I might just talk about some sort of hardware, sort of console-based memories related at the end. So first up, we've got, well, these two games are kind of go hand in hand. So that is Red Dead Redemption. Obviously, there was a second one on PlayStation 4. This, for me, was one of the best open world games I'd ever played at the time. Before that, it would probably only have been San Andreas on the PlayStation 2. But yeah, Rockstar really outdid themselves with this game, and I must have sunk so many hours and many late nights playing that game. And then just hand in hand goes the Undead Nightmare sort of DLC version of it. Didn't get the complete version, but I've not actually completed Undead Nightmare. I've started it, just not finished it, because they are a really good. It's a really good length of DLC. It's not just a cheap 2-hour thing. It is actually quite an extensive DLC, which is a common theme on PlayStation 3 I seem to find. So that's really cool. And then we've got a bit of a mix, but some of them are sort of ordered correctly. So next up, we've got Burnout Paradise. It should have been at the bottom of another pile with all the other racing games, but it's not. But yeah, Burnout Paradise was a game that I really couldn't wait to play on PlayStation 3. It's such an epic Burnout open world game. Obviously on the PS2 era, you didn't have the sort of open world free roam that you do in this game. So to me, at the time, that was absolutely mind-blowing for an arcade racing game to have that capability. And it absolutely runs really well on PS3 even to this day. I would say it even exceeds still the Switch version. And next up is a game that has an awful lot of memories to me, but unfortunately can't play anymore for online reasons, and that is MAG. So MAG stands for Massively Action Game, I think it is. It's a bit of a weird name, but so this game, if those who don't know, you'll see it for like 50p in shops because you need online to play it. It is only online, but this had 256 player first-person shooter battles. It was immense in its time. I spent so much time on this game. I mainly sort of played as a sniper, and these maps you would literally have to spend 20 minutes to run from one side to the other if you didn't get shot in the process, which was very unlikely. But yeah, 128 versus 128 back then was just absolutely mind-blowing, and I know a lot of games have done it more recently, but this was the first game that sort of blew my mind as to the capability to do that. It's just a shame that the servers haven't sort of adapted to sort of keep going, but it is made by a fairly small sort of developer, so that's hardly surprising. And next up is sort of the start of the really good RPGs on the PS3. So this is Darksiders, the original Darksiders. This has been remastered a couple times, I actually believe, and it's just an absolutely epic RPG. You're playing as War, one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and it has absolutely epic boss battles in this RPG. I absolutely loved it. The last boss fight, you're sort of in the clouds in sort of heaven, I think it is, and you sort of dive down into hell as well. It's just absolutely insane. It's really well designed game, and obviously that then led on to Darksiders 2. There was a Darksiders 3 that was not on the PlayStation 3, I don't believe, and I have played a little bit of it, but it didn't sort of tie me in as much as these two did, just because these were so good. If I'm going to recommend one, I would definitely recommend the first one, and they're surprisingly cheap to get actually, and I'd highly recommend them for anyone who loves their RPGs. The next up is a little first-person shooter series, alien based. So this is the Resistance All of Man series. 2 and 3 are here as well. And this is sort of one of the lesser known first-person shooter series, in my opinion. It has a really good story. Not the best, but it's made by Insomniac, who make Ratchet and Clank games. So it's definitely a really fluid game to play through. You're sort of battling against aliens who are trying to take over Earth, and there's really good boss fights in this. Really well thought out combat system, and yeah, I sunk a lot of time into these. Not games that I'm sort of inclined to go back and play, but if you've not played them before, then this series is definitely worth picking up. I think you can pick up all 3 games for less than £10 easily. So we've got quite a few arcade games coming up, arcade racing games even. So this is probably my favourite arcade racing game on the PlayStation 3, and I'm replaying it at the moment, and that is Blur by Activision, who obviously used to make Call of Duty games as well. But this is a really nice arcade racing game that it's sort of a mix between Need for Speed and Mario Kart is the best way to put it. It sort of feels like a quite adult Mario Kart, so even though there are power-ups to shoot other cars with and leave mines and shields and whatever else, there is an aspect that you have to actually get your lines right in the racing game. It's not a very forgiving racing game. And I've been playing it on hard mode, as I generally do with most of these games, and it actually is fairly tricky at points. You sort of get tiers of completion for each of the events, so there's like 1 star, 2 star, 3 star onwards, and it is difficult to get the top stars on every single event, even if you're very good at your arcade racing games. But it's one of the reasons I love it. It's actually quite a long game as well. There's sort of 10 tiers that have boss battles at the end, and you'll spend a minimum of an hour on each one, if not longer, depending on the difficulty obviously. So next up is the sort of Need for Speed games. So I've only really picked up a couple of these recently, so I've not got around to playing all of them. Need for Speed Carbon, it's actually one of the lesser known sort of remakes on the PlayStation 3. Obviously I absolutely love it on PlayStation 2. Those who watch my channel will absolutely know that as well. Need for Speed Undercover, this was actually didn't have very good reviews, but I actually quite enjoyed the story on that one. And then these two are ones that sadly I haven't had much time to play. I have sort of started Most Wanted, but I haven't started Hot Pursuit. But just wanted to get the set because they were extremely cheap and in good condition. And as Need for Speed games go, really good on PlayStation 3. All of them have very high ratings on reviews and stuff, so it was definitely worth picking those up. And then we have Race Driver Grid. So this was quite a unique arcade racer for me. So it's a bit more realistic than other arcade racers, but it has a mechanic where if you crash, you've got a certain amount of flashbacks, so you can go back a few seconds in time to retry what you were going to do in that race. So if you get an overtake wrong and you crash, etc., you can go back, and you get that sort of 3 times a race, I think it is, on normal mode. And yeah, it's got a lot of tracks. It's a really good game for a sensation of speed. The frame rate is very high for this game. Absolutely loved it. Completed it twice, I think. Yeah, absolutely love it. And then Gran Turismo 5. So this is probably the least played Gran Turismo game that I have. Still a very good Gran Turismo game. But for me, I didn't actually have a steering wheel at this point in time. So I didn't have sort of that fun of having the steering wheel to play it with. Next up is a game I've completed very recently, very cheap to pick up, and that is LA Noire by Rockstar. Obviously Rockstar make GTA, but this is obviously a noir style game in the 30s and 40s, I think it is, and it's got a very good story where you're a detective and you go through different stages of your career and investigate crimes. And yeah, I absolutely adored playing this story. Probably took about 15 or so hours, so a fairly decent story on that one. This one is probably the ones that my parents absolutely hated me playing on the big TV when I was at my parents' house when I was 17. So that is Rage. Rage is a sort of open world, kind of like Borderlands, very gory sort of combat system on it. I would say it's quite similar to Resistance series. But yeah, I really enjoyed playing this, and I've recently picked up Rage 2, I think it is, on PlayStation 4. So looking forward to getting stuck into that. We're almost halfway through, so this is just a quick one. That's The Sims 3. My wife actually picked up this one to play herself, but has not really sunk that much time into it. And then this one is an absolute classic on the PlayStation 2, but got remastered for PlayStation 3. So that is Ico and Shadow of the Colossus. Amazing RPG games. The next up we've got quite a popular series, let's say. So that is the Assassin's Creed series. A lot of people didn't really like the first game. I really enjoyed it, even though it was quite repetitive. And then obviously that spawned several sequels on PlayStation 3. My favourite was most definitely Black Flag. It is actually worth playing through the series just to get to that game, to be honest. I absolutely loved the pirate ship aspect of it. It was just so fun roaming the seas and pretending to be a pirate and plumaging ships for their treasure and coin. And then next up we've got a game that I haven't actually sunk much time into yet, but got it with the full intention of playing with the little one and the wife at some point. So that is Ratchet and Clank All for One. Does actually, it costs a fair bit, this one. I think it's at least £15-20. But yeah, really highly rated co-op game, so I would recommend anyone who likes up to 4-player co-op games to get that one. Next up is probably one of the only Call of Duties I actually own. I don't really play them that much, but World at War was, for me, their best game they've ever made. Obviously it's about World War II, and I found the actual story mode was a lot longer than the modern Call of Duties. And obviously it was the introduction of the zombies mode as well, so I really enjoyed that at the time, and being able to play with your friends 4 controllers on one console was really fun. So next up we've got the 2 Grand Theft Autos. We've got Grand Theft Auto 4, which obviously came out first. Annoyingly I've got this on Platinum, so I might have to sort of upgrade that to a non-Platinum at some point, but I actually got this, like, I think it was only about 2 months before 5 came out, just to sort of see what it was like. And I was pleasantly surprised as to how good it actually was. A really good story, in my opinion. So next up we've got Grand Theft Auto 5, which has obviously been remade the hell out of late, even having a PS5 release, which is just madness considering how old it is. But I queued up at midnight at my local store to get this, and then played it a few hours before I had to go to work. Yeah, it had such a hype when it was about to be released, and I was really chuffed to be a part of that. It was such a good story to play. Definitely a groundbreaking game, so if you haven't played this game, you need to play it. So next up is another groundbreaking game, and that is The Last of Us. I've always loved zombie-based games, but this just took it to a whole new level when I was a teenager. Absolutely loved playing as the different characters, and the whole mechanics sort of change that go through as you go through the story was something that really kept you gripped, in my opinion. So yeah, highly recommend that. And obviously the second one is absolutely brilliant as well on the PlayStation 4. So next up we've got some really good RPGs on the PlayStation 3. So that is Dragon's Dogma, which is actually get a second one soon on the PlayStation 5. But this has been sort of re-released on the Switch recently. It's a Japanese game, obviously made by Capcom. One of the best combat systems of any RPG ever. So if you are into RPGs and you've not played it, definitely check it out just for that. The story's not incredible, but the combat, trust me, is immense. So next up we've got the Dragon Age series. I am very much a lover of Dragon Age. So if I'd recommend one though, I'd recommend the first one, Dragon Age Origins. So I recently picked up, that is the original Dragon Age Origins, but I recently picked up the Origins Ultimate Edition. So this basically includes 2 fairly large DLCs as well. And yeah, it's just an incredible story. You can sort of choose your path as you go through the story as well, and it actually saves your choices to an online server as well, hosted by EA, so that when you go into the consequent games, it saves your choices and the game plays slightly differently. So I've always enjoyed replaying them just for that aspect. You can actually make different decisions, and then the game does change slightly, which was really cool to keep you engrossed in your own story. So I absolutely love them for that. Really decent combat systems in these games, and for what they are, they're very cheap to buy. You get so much story and bang for your buck with these games. Highly recommend to anyone. But yeah, if you're going to play one, definitely play the first one. Obviously makes sense to play the first one first anyway, but Dragon Age 1 is just got such a cult following in the RPG community, so yeah, you know it's going to be good. And next up is a game that I talk about way too much. So that's Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning. Got re-released on the PlayStation 4 and such equivalent consoles recently as Re-Reckoning. Even had a DLC on that, but this never had a DLC. So this was made by from the minds of R.A. Salvador, Todd McFarlane and Ken Rolston, very famous sort of minds. So R.A. Salvador was a famous author, Todd McFarlane is a famous artist, and Ken Rolston is sort of the lead designer, I think he was, for Elder Scrolls Oblivion, which is obviously one of the best RPGs as well. So I'd highly recommend playing that if you've not picked it up. It's incredibly cheap to play on the PlayStation 3. You'll see it for £1. And if you like your RPGs even a little bit, it's definitely worth getting. I'm definitely a collector when it comes to this game. If I'm going to choose one game to take to my desert island out of the PS3 collection, it's this one. So last few now, we've got Heavy Rain, which I've only really started playing recently. It's quite a sort of interactive game. I'd probably recommend getting the PS3 Move controller just to sort of get more immersed in it. I'm still enjoying it, playing with a controller. But yeah, it's just a game where you play through stories, a sort of rail story, but you make decisions and then it sort of goes in slightly different directions. But it has very sort of weird mechanics where you have to actually like shake the controller and rotate the joysticks in certain directions that you wouldn't in other games to achieve certain things like unlocking doors and such. So yeah, it's quite a unique game. You'll see it for very cheap. I believe it's quite a short one, but it has very good reviews anyway, so I'm looking forward to playing more of that soon. And then finally, I'm not going to talk too much about these games because I've not even played them yet. They're just sort of sat there, have been picked up because I want to play them, but I haven't had time yet. So that's South Park, The Stick of Truth. I absolutely love South Park the cartoon, so I can't wait to play that. Got Arkham City, Batman, which is a complete edition, which includes some DLCs, so I'm sure that'll be a lot of content based on that. And then finally is Army of Two, which I picked up purely because it was a co-op campaign game, and I absolutely love playing co-op campaign games with the wife. So that is it for my PlayStation 3 game collection video, guys. Hope you've enjoyed listening to my ramblings about the games that I've sort of played in my teenage years on the PlayStation 3. Just a console that I absolutely love to this day. And for collectors' purposes, it actually is a really, really good console to collect for at the moment. A lot of the games I mentioned, not very expensive at all, less than a fiver most of them. And the accessories are also very cheap. You can generally pick up controllers for £10 or less. And actually, they are one of my... It's worth mentioning that the controllers, I think, are actually one of the best controllers ever made for any console. If you like your PS2 controller and the PS1, which is obviously very similar, the PS3 controller is basically just a wireless version. And it is really, really lightweight. And what I've actually noticed recently is, going back to the PS3 from not playing on the PlayStation 5, I prefer the PlayStation 3 controller. The battery lasts a lot longer, so I don't have to worry about charging it very often. The vibration is still very, very good. And it's just a very comfortable, lightweight controller. Lightweight is definitely the thing that sort of draws me in most. I absolutely hate the PS5 controller, to be honest. I have to sit up and play with it. If I sort of lie down at all with the PlayStation 5 controller, my hands absolutely kill. I get quite bad RSI because I work in IT support, so yeah, my mouse work is sort of quite prominent, and I get RSI very, very quickly. So having a lightweight controller or mouse is obviously very useful for people like me. So yeah, I absolutely love the PlayStation 3 controller, and that sort of contributed to why I love the console so much. It was also the first console that I got a steering wheel for. Just because it had so many good racing games, and yeah, I'm definitely going to go back to them at some point and do some sort of video with my high-end sim rig. You can sort of buy converters and then put it into your PlayStation 3 and play the older games on modern sim racing hardware. So I'll do that at some point, but yeah, it might be a little while for that. But if you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you very soon for another video. Cheers.